Tonight, reinforcing our commitment to a fully inclusive Temple Emanu-El, we celebrate diversity and the strength it brings with a very special guest who has spent years at the forefront of Israel's human rights movement. Born and raised on kibbutz Kfar Menachem in southern Israel, Ofer Erez began training with the Israel Defense Force, identifying as a woman, and went on to graduate from officer training as a trans male, the very first openly trans officer in the IDF. After being promoted to the rank of captain, he served as an advisor to the IDF on LGBTQ-related issues, helping to change its policies towards transgender enlistment and perceptions towards the transgender community. After leaving the military, Ofer served as executive director of Jerusalem Open House, a community center and advocacy group dedicated to making Jerusalem a truly inclusive city. And for 2 years, he led Jerusalem's March for Pride and Tolerance. In 2020, he joined the Israel Religious Action Center to found its Department of Public Affairs. With tremendous pleasure and with so much awe and gratitude, I welcome up to this bima Captain Ofer Erez.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's a great honor, huge honor to be here, something I couldn't imagine as a kid who was born and raised, who grew up in a kibbutz. It's not even my first memory. It's something my parents told me. In the kibbutz, when and where I was born, we were around 300 people. Not even families, 300 people. And when I was born, the beginning of the 90s, again, it's not my first memory. My mom told me that. I came to her as her first daughter, and I asked her to shave my head. And she looked at me and she said, okay, and she let me shave my head. A few years later, this I already remember myself. I was around the age of 4 or 5, and I came to my parents again, and I asked them, no, I demanded to get rid of all of the dresses and skirts I had in my closet, again, their first daughter. So they looked at me and they said, okay, and they let me wear what I wanted. I remember one particular day. Again, I was still in kindergarten. It was Friday, Yom Shishi. Very special day in the kibbutz. Each family gathered to his own home, prepare itself for Shabbat. Back then in the kibbutz, we had the big dining room where we all ate together and celebrated Shabbat. And I remember this particular day, me and my family, like every other Friday evening, walking together to the big dining room, all dressed up for Shabbat. My parents stopped for a second to talk to a friend of theirs. And I stood there, and I saw in the corner of my eye a family of a friend of mine from kindergarten. They were also dressed up for Shabbat, and I looked at her, and she was wearing a white dress, and I was wearing a white button-down shirt, because this is what I chose. And I tried to understand why. Why do I choose this shirt and she choose this dress? I had no answers to myself, and the only words I could find was that maybe just God put me in the wrong body. And with those words, in the age of 5, I think I created my own secret. I realized those words are not something I could say out loud. And I took those words with me until the age of maybe 13, when I was able to articulate a bit better the fact that I have my internal reality and my external reality, and those two can never meet. I tried to imagine myself growing up, and I realized I want to finish up high school, I want to enlist like everybody else, I want to finish up my military service, and then, I don't know, and then I would need to disappear. Because if you think about it, I could never imagine myself growing up to be a woman. Those two realities could never meet. So the only way I could be myself in my imagination was if I ran away to some place where nobody knows me, to some faraway country, in order to start a new life under a new identity. I honestly believed, and I have a loving family and a lovely group of friends. I knew they are not going to just let me disappear, so I honestly believe I would need to fake my own death in order for them to give up on looking for me, so they wouldn't blow my cover, so I would be able to live as I want. With this, my secret grew more and more, and during high school, I met, again, a lovely group of friends, and we got so close that every conversation we had, I just felt more and more alone, because they could share everything, and I couldn't share anything. Because if you think about it, for each and every one of us, when we were born, they told our mother in the hospital, congratulations, you have a son or you have a daughter, and from that moment on, they are planning a whole different future for us. So if I couldn't explain my friends that back then in the delivery room, they started imagining the wrong future for me, how can I even start to explain who I am? But it was in the kibbutz, in the middle of nowhere in Israel. I didn't have the words I have today. I have no words. I couldn't imagine how I can even start to explain to my friends what I'm feeling. I just knew I want to say something to someone. I don't know what would make a 16-year-old define the deadline, but I did. I said if until the June 1st I can't find anyone I can speak to, any one of my friends or loving family, I will ask to see a psychologist. Not because I felt like I need help. I felt like I need to talk to someone. And if you know something about the kibbutz, you know that even the walls have ears and mouth. And so when I thought about a psychologist, I thought about a room where I can go in, close the door, say whatever I want, get in, close the door again, and nothing happens. But I also hoped that the deadline would give me the courage, maybe push me to find someone to talk to. But a week went by, and 2 weeks, and a month, and 2 and 3, and nothing changed, no new words. And it was the middle of May already. So in this point, we don't go to school, just do exams. And I roamed around the country visiting friends. And one of them had a new boyfriend. And I went to meet her and him. And we sat down and we talked. And one of the things that he told me about himself is that he's trans. I asked him, what does it mean? And he explained to me that he was born a female, but he's a man. This is how we feel, this is how we think, and this is how he lives his life. And I looked at him and I said, can you do that? And he laughed. He said yes. And I didn't say it yet, but back then I looked exactly the same way as I do right now, just without the beard, unfortunately the same height. So speaking to him was like the missing piece of the puzzle. He gave me the words I never had, and he gave me the understanding that I'm not alone, I'm not special, I didn't invent anything. And he was also the first person I told. After him, I told my friend, his girlfriend, my friends, my family, It wasn't this Hollywood scene when I stand up in front of my classroom and tell everybody, I'm a boy now, completely the opposite. It was very personal for me. Every friend I talked to, I took to the side to a personal conversation. I asked them to keep it a secret. I told them how private it is for me and how important it is for me to be able to speak to each person that I defined as a friend, that I want to let them know the real me. And this is how I spent the last 2 years of high school, sitting down with friends on one-on-one conversation, sharing who I am. It was funny because it wasn't like it was no longer a secret. I just let people in to my world, sharing my secret with them and let them carry the secret with me. I wasn't alone anymore. It allowed me to start feel like I am just any other teenage boy in my classroom. And in the kibbutz, especially back then, all we can think about, boys and girls, is the military service. What are we going to do? What is going to be like? What's the service going to be like? And how can I do a meaningful service? For me, it was no question. I'm going to serve. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to do a meaningful service. And my worst fear was to be a poster boy, like I am right now. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to be judged according to who I am, according to my abilities. And I still had no one to talk to. I do remember the conversation with my parents, you know. I got all excited when I got the first letter in the mail from the military saying you're starting your recruitment process. By the way, my parents met in officer school. This is my family. So I came all excited, and their eyes went dark of fear. My dad was gentle. He asked me, do you know what to expect as a trans person in the military? My mom was less gentle. She said, are you sure you want to enlist? What about national service, like going to a hospital or a school? I was 16, so I ignored them. I even was, angry for asking. I said, what are you talking about? It's going to be no problem. Nothing will happen. It's all going to be okay and normal. But of course, I knew it wasn't true. I remember going to my room, going to the internet, the 2009 version of it, and trying to look for answers. What does it mean to be trans in the IDF? The answer was nothing. I did, however, find one comment on one, forum saying, oh, no problem, if you're a trans, just go to the military psychologist and he will give you a discharge. And I was like, no, this is not my question. I want to serve. My question is, how can I do a meaningful service? The answer was nothing. And I decided for myself, first of all, my words back then were, I'm not going to let the trans issue affect my service. I did, however, realize I want to be open and honest with my commanders. I want to be open and honest with, let's call it the system, and yet I'm terrified of what will happen if people around me will know. So when I enlisted, When I enlisted, I did tell the military officials, and by the way, I had only one thing to ask them for. I said, I'm not wearing girls' clothing ever since I was 5, and I'm not going to start now. In the IDF, like many other institutions, we have the male uniform and the female uniform, pretty much alike. Small differences, but gender goes a lot about symbols and signs. So if in the female uniform you have only one pocket in your shirt, and in the male you have 2 pockets, wearing this shirt with only one would be like walking around with a sticker over my forehead saying, I'm a woman. And I didn't plan on doing that. I tried to explain myself with no results. They were nice, by the way. They were. And had nothing to offer to me. They said, as long as your ID says you're a female, this is how we're going to treat you. When I enlisted, the day of my recruitment, in the recruitment center, I remember doing one last try and explaining an officer. He was also very compassionate, I guess. He was nice. And he told me, listen, you have two options. One is to go, take the uniform, go on the bus and start your training. And the other is start your service in the military prison. If you refuse an order in the military, you go to prison. If you refuse the order of taking your uniform, this is how your service is going to start. So in Hebrew, we have a saying of swallowing the frog. I went outside of his office, took a few breaths, and said, I'm going to swallow the frog. I'm going to do that. And I took the female uniform, even though for a year and a half I tried to convince myself that everything's going to be fine, I'm going to find a solution. I didn't. I remember being on the bus and having tears stuck here, tears of not sadness, it's something else, maybe frustration, anger. I couldn't even believe that's happening. But in the first 24 hours of every soldier in every unit, you must have a personal conversation with your commander for them to better know you and for you to understand where you're at. And I, as I told you, decided I am going to be honest with my commanders. And I told my 19-year-old commander, she probably joined 6 months before me, and I guess she never heard the term trans before, and she most definitely never met someone who identifies trans. But the only thing she told me after me telling her my personal story was, okay, so what do you need? How can I help? I was shocked and said, well, men's uniform, please. And she said, okay, let me check. She did. She came back to me the next day saying, they can't. There isn't any way they can give me the male uniform. But they did thought about more creative solution, work uniform, because work uniform in the IDF are similar unisex for men and women, and by that they solved my problem. Beside that, they came to me and offered me 5 minutes alone in the shower, and it's because I don't care if it's men, women, or bunnies. I have a problem with my own body, so I want to be alone. They thought about it. I just didn't shower for a while there. They did a few other small things that for me was everything. It showed me that they see me for who I am, they see me by my abilities and not by my identity, but they see the needs behind this identity, and they want to see me succeed. During my service, my commanders had a lot of respect for me and actually encouraged me to go to officer school. And in the first few days, we already start talking about what does it mean to be an officer, what does it mean to be a commander, and having soldiers under your command. What kind of relationship do you want to have with them? And for me, it was obvious. I want to have an open and honest relationship with my soldiers. But realization aside, it took me until the last week of officer course to be able to stand in front of my company and use an excuse to tell them about who I really am. I stood in front of 60 cadets. We just had 3.5 months together in the desert. Actually, I don't remember anything, almost anything from this conversation. I have complete blackout from the stress. I just remember that I opened it by telling them that I want to share something personal with them, not because I want them to better know me. This is a bonus. I want to share with them my personal story because we are all going to be commanders really soon in a military that have mandatory draft. The army of the people. We are going to have people that are different from us. And I want to give them another tool to their toolbox. If and when they're going to have a soldier with a similar background to mine, and then the blackout. I don't remember anything. I do remember, however, finishing by saying that it's no longer a secret. And it stopped being a secret that moment. The same officer course that I started as a female cadet, I graduated as a male officer and came back to my unit and tried to have the most normal service you can have. But it's been exactly a year after I graduated officer school when I got a phone call from the spokers person unit, those who work with reporters. They said, listen, you are the first trans to, the first officer, the first trans to serve openly as, you get me, and we want to do an article about you. I said, no, thank you, I like my privacy, but they convinced me and they said you can do it anonymously and without picture and just let us do the story. And I agreed, and I read the story, by the way, it was horrible. Don't believe anything you read in the newspaper. I was ashamed, you know, they took the most personal, intimate details of my life and put it all wrong, make it dramatic and just, you know, clickbait worthy. And I thought of my mom. I thought of her friends in the kibbutz all reading the article, knowing this is me, thinking this has happened to me. I said, never again. I'm not going to speak to reporters ever again. But 2 weeks later, I guess it was, she called me again, the same officer, saying, listen, some kid contacted the reporter to contact us, to contact you, because he read the article and he wanted to ask you, how can he also, he's trans, how can he also do a meaningful service? How can he serve his country as a trans person, not needing to hide? I was, you know, I was happy. I said, yeah, of course, I would love to talk to him, and I did. But the thing was that after him came another one, and another one, and another one, and I realized I'm not alone and something bigger going on. And I actually started working with the IDF itself, starting to build a policy according to my own experience and the experience of the people that reached out to me. In that point, I realized I need to let go of my dislike of reporters, not reporters, just the articles, because that's the way to let people know that they are also deserving equal opportunities, that they have rights, that they should expect respectful service. It wasn't my job, by the way. It was a hobby, something I did over lunches. I started working hand in hand with the IDF itself, but also the civil society in Israel. This is how I got to know the NGOs, the LGBTQ NGOs that advocate and act in order to get equal rights. And after meeting them, I decided to change plans. This is how I decided I'm not going to stay in the military and I'm not going to study engineering, which this is what I wanted. I'm going to join the Jerusalem Open House for Pride and Tolerance, which is the only LGBTQ organization in Jerusalem serving all the people of Jerusalem, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Orthodox, Palestinians from the West Bank and settlers from the West Bank. Everybody are welcomed, no matter who you are and how you identify. Being in Jerusalem opened my eyes to so much more than just what I saw in the military service. And having that opportunity also got me closer to you guys and the Jewish community in the United States, that I would never forget the first time I went to the US, and it was with it was a delegation, a speaking tour about my military service. And they told me, yeah, you're going to speak in a synagogue for Friday night. And I said, I don't think you got it right. I'm trans. We don't go to the synagogue. And they laughed and said, it's a Reform synagogue. I said, I don't know what it is, but no. And they said, wait. And I discovered that Judaism doesn't have to be what we are being told in the kibbutz and what we are used to see on the TV, and there is a different way. And there are communities that are welcoming and loving and supporting. And it's a process. And we're doing this process together. So I want to say thank you again for being here and for being a part of this community that invited me. And thank you all. Shabbat Shalom.